Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Modern Markets podcast. And today I have with me a very special guest. His name is Yoshi Yokakowa. So he's just going to go ahead and just get into his story. So he's from Alpaca Markets. He's a CEO and co-founder of Alpaca Markets. So if you would, Yoshi, just go ahead and dive right in.
Sure. I'm excited to be here. My name is Yoshi. I'm the co-founder, CEO of Alpaca.markets. Alpaca is an API-first broker-dealer. We offer US stock trading through developer-first API with commission-free.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. And how did you get into, it's probably a long journey for you, but I guess to sum it up, how did you get to the point where you started up Alpaca Markets?
Sure. I think I've been always in the finance industry since the beginning of my career. But after working at the investment bank and doing day trading myself for a few years, I always knew that there's a huge opportunity to be in the broker-dealer space. And, it happened to be, we found this niche that API-first approach is something that, people are really looking for that hasn't existed yet. So that's basically kind of really high-level story in the context why we're doing Alpaca Markets.
Awesome. And so I noticed, now you're from Japan, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I actually, I had a chance to visit Osaka, Japan in October 2019. Thank God.
That's where I'm from.
That's where you're from? Awesome.
Yeah.
Had a great time in Osaka, just a really chill environment. And I got to do that obviously before this whole coronavirus lockdown thing. Thank God.
Yeah.
But what would you say the main difference between Japanese culture or really just Osaka culture? Because I know it's got to be a little bit different from the rest of Japan.
Yeah.
As opposed to the US, for example.
Yeah. Sure. Firstly, Osaka is a little bit the city for merchants instead of Tokyo, super formal, very uptight about it. So, we're always about realism and looking for something go direct. So in that sense, it's a little bit closer to the US instead of Tokyo. But I think the main difference between the Japan and the US is the kind of in the US, I feel natural, working or doing a startup. You feel very normal doing that. If you're in Japan, people's oh wow, that's kind of unique, that's kind of different. And I think that in the US, being normal makes you focus on what you're working on. So I think it's better to be in the US in terms of doing a startup, I think.
Yeah. And Osaka was I don't want to say sleepy. I don't think sleepy is the correct word. It's just very just calm, very chill. Sometimes I listen to lo-fi. I don't know if you're familiar with lo-fi music, and they've always got
sure.
And they're always playing they have the Japanese background,
Right.
Yeah, that's how I feel that's like Osaka.
Yeah, makes sense, man.
Yeah. So I love it. I'd go back in a heartbeat. So awesome. To go more in depth, how did you come up with the idea for Alpaca?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sure. As I talked about, I generally saw there's a huge opportunity in the broker-dealer space, but specifically the reason why we decided to focus on API first is that it really comes from our my experience doing another fintech startup before Alpaca Markets, basically building deep learning AI algorithm to selling that to trading firms, banks, hedge funds. When I were doing that, we had to integrate with the broker dealers, and it was pain in the ass. It just takes 3-6 months to find where the API documentation is or who's responsible for, and another 3-6 months to get approval to build build on top of it. So we thought that whole experience is the problem for the developers to build something new in this investing and trading space. So that's how we really experienced the pain ourselves to decide to build Alpaca.
Right. So basically, the problem is, when it's not very easy to set up solutions because there is no existing API platform. That's where Alpaca comes in and just says, hey, we've already done it for you. We already have the development done. You can use our API, and it's just an easy process. And then, and this is one of my questions, how do you feel like the landscape is going to change now that APIs like yours are here, where competition kind of just run free?
Right. So I think commissions free is a given, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we think about fintech or even this investing and trading space, it's just a commodity in a way. Like, because you are providing something that's unlimited supply, because it's traded in the exchanges, which means that pricing is not the easy way to differentiate yourself. So that's why it's always should be zero and commission free. But we can start still add a lot of values if you understand your customers and the user base, because each of the user group has a different type of the needs and how they approach that financial services. And I think for us, the focus is how can we be the best platform for the developers. And other than developers, we probably wouldn't be the best, and it's okay. And I think that's how we think about kind of answering your question about commissions being free for everyone.
Yeah. And then, so now that this is available, how would companies outside of the US start up their own platform and utilize this API? Are there regulations in place that would keep them from engaging in parts of the API, or is this just free roam?
So it's a very good question. The regulation usually runs very locally. For example, where we are regulated in the United States is FINRA and SEC, and that's where we need to make sure very much compliant to those regulations. But if we go outside a different country, each country has a different regulator, and they have a different level of the restriction or regulation, which we of course need to understand. And when we work with the partners, we usually ask for some of the understanding, standard knowledge base, how that works in different countries, because we would not know every single country how it works. You need to learn, keep learning.
Right. Okay, so for example, let's say there's a company in Malaysia and they come to you and they say, hey, we want to build this platform, we want to use your API. So do you guys have to go ahead and do your own research on that, or is that more on their end?
So usually for example, specifically in Malaysia, because I know some background context and how it works in Malaysia, so I can answer that specifically. but let's see, if it's a country that I've never really don't know what's going on, and I've never worked with, then I'll definitely ask for, hey, I'm not an expert, I'm not a local person there, I really need to rely on you, how the regulation works. And you can do the basic research, you can talk with your lawyers locally to find out. And that's how we kind of start getting into how the regulation work for where and where.
Gotcha. Okay. And so you mentioned that you were offering deep learning financial tools to banks before starting Alpaca. So I want to just, myself, I'm getting into AI more. I'm getting into, whole data science, deep learning, and all this machine learning, all that good stuff. Could you maybe expand on, how deep learning or AI in general can benefit the fintech industry, or maybe even just to talk about what you were doing with your own deep learning tools?
Sure. I think AI or deep learning, at the end of the day, when we were doing that business, we are really focusing on how to automate things, how to automate the process of traders, or not very easy task, but more complex thought process, and how can we automate that by learning from those models. So that's what we are trying to do. And what I feel is AI and deep learning is really about how to make the things efficient, how to create the routine into the automation. And I think deep learning happens to be more accurate way to kind of make the repetition of how the human thinks and processes. So that's how I think about it.
Right. And do you think that, I guess this is a given, but how do you see it expanding as time goes on? I mean, obviously it's, automated processes are one thing, that's a very, I guess, basic way to view it. And there's also bots, bots are obviously automated. They're kind of like AI, but not entirely. I guess, how do you see AI and deep learning evolving as time goes on, or where do you think that it could most benefit, the fintech industry?
I think it's really automation of the process is definitely the key. Even AML, KYC, the back office operation, I think those things can be automated much more because it's all about flagging things that should not be happening is happening, and that can be detected by AI actually.
That is a very good point, actually. And I think that would make a lot of sense, because one of the things that slows down the fintech industry is the regulations, obviously. So if we could have some type of AI solution to just take care of us automatically, that would just make life so much easier. So I like that. It's a great idea. So I read that you guys went through Y Combinator. What was that experience like for you and maybe for the team?
Yeah, so YC really focuses on the founder. So basically, like Hitoshi and I went through that together. But there are like few, I guess like a few things, right? Like well, I guess like a couple of things. Like one is the experience of like doing the program, which is like 3 months or so. Is during the process, it's like a sprint, like 2 week sprint. We get together every 2 weeks, and we get pushed a lot to focus on one key metrics and just push that grow. So like I really learned what not to do, and just focus on just really one thing. And like if we just do that, like it becomes like really possible to achieve super high goal. And another thing is obviously like the connection that YC has. Just being the YC company really has given us and like continue to give us a lot of credibility and the brand that we wanted to have. So those are the couple of things I really learned going through the YC.
And so could you expand on exactly what capabilities you'll have if you were to use the Alpaca API? So for example, obviously you can trade stocks. That's the main thing. What other tools can you use? Like, is there margin trading, leverage, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. Like, our API offers firstly the real-time data, market data. We offer the ability to, of course, buy and sell and the short sell securities, do the margin trading, margin lending. But that is really the main features of our API. And, we're building a bunch of the features that let developers to build the whole broker-dealer operation via API. So those things are that we're going to be launching, soon in this year.
And then what would you say? So I read on your TechCrunch article that Drive Wealth and Galileo were probably your biggest competitors. What would you say your biggest advantage over those two competitors is?
So actually, like Galileo is not really a competitor.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I was like, is this really close enough?
Yeah, Galileo is like does like a lot of I think more the banking product, the cash management. I think like DriveWealth is also a brokerage API, and what I always think is that this market is huge, right? Like there's a 30 trillion U.S. stock market cap. And within that, there's $8 trillion held by non-U.S. persons. So, like that humongous amount of the assets has to go through some of the U.S. regulated broker dealer, and there are not very many players doing this in the way of the API first approach. So in a way, like both DriveWealth and us trying to push this like API first against more of the super legacy.
Establishment,
institutions, right.
Yeah.
So in a way, like I wouldn't even think they're competitors. Like they're the huge pie there. We just need to have a focus for each. DriveWealth focuses on a lot of fractionals. We focus on more of the trading side of the features. And also developer first components. So that's how we think about it.
It's funny because Robinhood's name is Robinhood, but they're not on their own really Robinhood, because if you think about it, Alpaca is really more of a Robinhood than Robinhood is, because what you guys are doing is you're allowing for even more competition to take away from this big slice of traditional finance establishment, right? So you're taking away a lot of this market cap that, like you actually said in the article, rich people normally only have access to. So you are essentially the Robinhood of the API market, essentially, and taking away a lot of this normally like rich people finance. So I thought that was pretty cool. And actually, I do want to talk about that quote, and because I know this probably means a lot to you. But the quote in the article, you want to make sure that people, even outside the US, have access to a way of building wealth that's historically only available to rich people. Could you expand on how this is going to affect people's lives outside of the US? Because we know that the US has access to financial tools that most of the world doesn't have access to.
That is exactly right. Like, like all the financial services and product is really under the US and in the US. When we are living in the US, we don't realize it's privilege, right?
Yes.
Like I'm from Japan. So even Japan, it's the third biggest economy, super close to the US still. We have to pay humongous amount of the money to just buy listed US securities.
Yeah.
And if we think about those under the FINRA regulation, bunch of the regulation CF, crowdfunding securities or fractional shares of the vintage goods, or like even like, STOs or like those kind of things, right? It's just not really approachable if you go outside the United States. That needs to change, because it's not really only for the consumers who should have access to it, but also the businesses and projects and the individual who's starting out those companies or projects should have more ways to basically fund their things. And in a way, STO or stocks or like, crowdfunding, whatever, it is the way to do that. And there needs to be more distribution to the 7 billion persons on the earth. And we want to be a hub for that by building the API infrastructure.
Love it. Love it. And you just mentioned STOs, security token offerings. What do you think about that? That's kind of a new thing that's popped up on the scene.
Yeah, so I think like, there's a conversations like STO or security token or tokenized security. There's some people say like each of them is actually different. Like I'm not really too sure about like, legal aspects.
Yeah, I don't know either. So don't worry.
yeah. But like what I think is that like those financial products are to be regulated, because if it's not regulated, we've seen so many weird things happen, of course, in the ICO hype, and the IEO, and also
so you know all about this stuff.
and of course, like that history rhymes itself, right? Like we've actually seen all those same thing in the 1920s, when the market was just getting formed, and that's why there's a regulation of the 1933 1934 of the FINRA regulation happened and started it. So we need to learn from that. So in that sense, like all those regulated financial products, securities will be eventually regulated somehow, and which means like mainly US will take that part of it, regardless of it's a digitized or non-digitized, and we want to make sure that we have access to it. We can distribute those assets through one API.
So STOs are definitely, obviously, as soon as regulations are more clear, that's on your roadmap for Alpaca Markets, right?
Yeah, like any securities that we can connect to. That's what we're gonna do.
Right. So now I want to ask you, because we have a large audience that's like Bitcoin, digital asset centric. So I want to ask you what your thoughts are on Bitcoin, and if you have any knowledge about the Bitcoin halving that obviously just occurred a couple days ago. What are your thoughts on those two things?
Actually, like we were founders of the Bitcoin meetup in Osaka.
Really?
2000. When was it? 2012 or 13?
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, we were basically doing that with Toby and Paul of the 10X. I don't know if you remember 10X before. Yeah, those founders are my friends, right? Like,
nice.
We were doing the Bitcoin meetups, since then. So
that's awesome.
I think like it's a really, really cool product, and obviously like people believe in it, and it's well storing the assets in digital way. So like I believe that there's definitely value. But like in terms of the how I think about it, like I don't have like honestly like too much strong opinion. What I see is that like one is that I see as an asset class, like how the market changes around, how the prices moves around, and I've been day trading that when there was a hype in like a couple of years ago,
right.
And also I went to Zug of the Switzerland to like see the crypto valley and like how it was forming. So I'm a big fan of like the concept of the decentralization, but at the same time I also understand extremely importance of the regulation. I think like we need to have a balance, and we need to be very sane about like what would happen, and like how it needs to be governed some way.
Right. Yeah. So regulation obviously is very important, and that obviously that's a big thing, especially for what we were just mentioning earlier, the ICOs and IEOs. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the craze, in 2017 and even 2018, where ICOs and IEOs were just everywhere, and money was just being thrown around. What are your opinions on like crowdfunding in that way? Because the opinions vary depending on who you talk to.
Well, I think like crowdfunding, I think like it's great in my opinion, and also like ICO in a way like it's a crowdfunding because like you are part of the project. So I think the concept is great. It just needs to be done in a controlled manner, so that people are getting something that he or she understands that he or she will get, instead of okay, this is going to go up or something like that. But instead, really, it's like on the rights of that, like your favorite pub, right? Like you kind of own some of it. Like you don't expect to monetize from it, but you just feel proud to be a part of it. I feel like that component, I feel it's more important. And I think we should push them more so that it becomes more holdable by more people without feeling the risk.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to ask you, what's the finance culture in Japan? Because man, in the U.S. it doesn't exist. I say it doesn't exist. I mean, obviously the difference between the people who understand finance and the people who don't is very, very, massive. So we have a lot of people who are very uneducated on finance. And so obviously you have a lot of credit problems, credit issues and whatnot. But what's the kind of the culture around finance in Japan?
The biggest difference between the US and Japan is that we just don't talk about it in Japan, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because we did one fintech startup in Japan and try to scale it somehow globally. And what I really learned is that culture towards the money and the investing or anything around the money is all different and localized and culturalized. So there's no one way of thinking if you cross the culture. So how you think about it in the US is very different from how you think about it in Canada about money. It's all different for each country and the regulation. Therefore, each of the application that goes viral is all different in that culture, and the language difference is there as well. So specifically, if you compare two countries of the Japan and the US, Japan, you just don't talk about the money. We just don't talk about try to make money or what would be a great investment, because we just don't talk about it. And only 10% of the household income is held at the investment, where US is about 40 to 50%. So that really shows humongous culture difference about money and investing between two countries.
I was not expecting that. I was expecting a much greater percentage, because some of these US people are dumb as rocks.
But I think US culture is basically stocks, right? In the US, we're built everything is built on top of the expectation and the premises that it just simply goes up every year, 7%, 6%, it just goes up. In Japan, our culture and money and the attitude towards money is that things stabilize, never changes every year. That's our expectation. That's why there's no reason for us to put the money into stocks, because it shouldn't go up.
That's interesting. In Japan, and you spoke about this earlier, about the difficulties of investing, obviously the difficulties of investing in the US stock market. What are the main products in Japan that people would look to invest in anyways?
So there's a word of the investing and speculation. And I think if we talk about the investing, a lot of Japanese people think firstly in the real estate, trying to generate some fixed income yield.
Yep.
And try to put some Nikkei index, but it's pretty rare, because people we grew up being told that stocks is extremely high risk and it's going to go down. So we really don't want to put the money in there.
Right.
So that's really the the things that we know. But at the same time, because information got global, we know that Google, Facebook just keeps going up, and Amazon as well.
Yep.
So we all understand that having the exposure to the US stock and US stock market is very different from the how the Japanese economy is.
Yeah, you know what? I want to talk about the vending machines across Japan.
Yeah.
What's up with that, man? I mean, I can literally go to Osaka and I'll just see a random vending machine out in the middle of a field.
Yeah.
What's up with that idea for vending machines?
I mean, we all need drinks, right? We all need water. We all need the tea. So that's what it is. I mean, I think it is a technology there.
Yeah.
That's a very, very interesting technology.
Yeah, and all the vending machines, they look like they're from the 80s.
Yeah.
Or at least, like most of them do. At least in Osaka. Maybe Tokyo is different, but
yeah,
I think it's so funny. And then there's a retro aspect to a lot of the tech. It's so interesting to me. So yeah, that was fun. We were with I don't know if you know Dan Friedman. He actually lives in Osaka. He actually helped set up the Reebok deal for Cardano. He lives up in Osaka. Great dude. We were out at his house, and that's where we would just find random vending machines just all across these fields. So I just thought that was really funny. So I don't know. What do you think about the upcoming wave of digital assets? Are you guys eventually going to consider bringing on Bitcoin, maybe Ethereum, some of these assets in the future?
I think our vision is building an API infrastructure for financial assets in general.
Right.
So US stocks is just one of the assets that we want to basically consolidate into. So in that sense, of course, it includes, those digital assets. US stocks is not the only thing, credit derivatives and all those fractionals and like crowdfunding securities, all the asset classes, financial assets needs to be, consolidated into one. So yeah, of course, we do consider that in the future.
Let's talk about COVID. Why not? That's a thing that's going around. What's the situation like in Japan right now for COVID?
It's actually getting loosened up. Most of the prefecture and states has been kind of liberated from the jishuku, or kind of you are volunteering stay at home,
right?
And the death rates and the new COVID just dropped down significantly. We really didn't have much to begin with, so it's pretty loose. It's pretty chill.
Yeah, and actually, I would say it's the same here. I'm in Georgia, state of Georgia, so it's pretty chill here. I mean, it's it's definitely not like New York.
Right.
New York is like night and day. So
yeah, I hear that. Yeah,
that's good to hear. What got you into the fintech sector in general? I know everybody has interesting different stories of how you kind of got here in the first place.
I think a lot of people come from the tech, but I come from very much finance. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty natural to me that I understand the background, the industry. And, I always had to believe that, things will be automated. Even my, work that I was doing at Lehman Brothers, I thought it should be automated. So, that naturally pushed me into the more of the tech side, automation side of the thing. And I happen to know more of the financial services. So it's fintech sounds kind of, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Symbiotic relationship.
Right. Yeah,
awesome.
But we didn't hear that word at the very beginning, right? I think we started hearing that more about that word of the fintech. I don't know, 2000. When was it? 16 or 17. Until then, we weren't really using the word fintech too much of it.
Right.
Yeah, since then.
And now wealth tech is kind of the new term.
Right.
Yeah. The subset of fintech.
Exactly.
Right. And, you're an entrepreneur, all right?
Yeah.
You've done a lot of different businesses over the years. I think it's really cool to offer advice to, any startups that are maybe looking at getting into fintech industry or maybe just in the fintech industry in general. What advice would you give to anyone trying to start a business in the fintech industry?
There are many layers of the fintech. Even there's some fintech Plaid that you're not really regulated, but it's a humongous business opportunity. Whereas, there's a business even IEX, in building exchange or us being a broker dealer, humongous effort to just do this. So I think it needs some patience, right? Going through the regulation, it doesn't happen you just build it and scale. You actually need to wait for certain months or years to get certain license, and you need that to actually operate. So it needs some patience, but you learned a lot because making your own bank or broker dealer from ground up is just you don't experience that in your life too much. So it's extremely fulfilling. And of course, market is huge. So I think there's many things that can be done, and people should just try for it.
Yeah, and for the most part, you guys have built something completely new. Alpaca could become literally an entire ecosystem of new companies, using your product, and literally you being the foundation for that.
Yeah, that's why we're aiming for it. That's why we are patient, because we know that this is going to be huge.
It's just going to take time. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Yep. And you guys are obviously creating the ease of access to these to this product, stocks and whatnot. So I want to ask you, I don't know what the scene is like now, but I know that when I was in Osaka, the idea behind cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and all that in Japan is really not that popular. Has that changed at all, or is that kind of the same opinion?
So you mean you went to Japan in 2019, right?
Right. So late 2019.
Yeah, so I think because you went there after the trend died out.
Yeah.
Japan and Korea probably were the biggest trading volume generator in the world of the digital currency trading because of a company called Bitflyer, and there are multiple exchanges.
There was Liquid, I think, in Japan as well.
Liquid. Yeah. So, and like, the Japanese regulator initially were pretty loose on the digital assets
Right.
trading. So like, yeah, we saw a lot of trading happening, the most. And the same thing as like, FX, right? Foreign exchange trading.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, Japan has the humongous amount in terms of the trading volume. If you see that like retail trading, like Mrs. Watanabe, like that's a big thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
Japanese housewives trading a lot of FX. So like
Really?
those people, yeah. So that's why like like even if you see like FX professional Wall Street trading, people use the word, oh, Mrs. Watanabe moved, because it's like kind of Japanese retailers moving the positions to certain assets or certain position.
That's
So
cool. I didn't know that.
yeah. So like Japan is like a huge trading country. So like digital currency was kind of extension of the FX trading because a lot of
Mm.
leverage. So it was pretty natural. But like of course, like regulation kind of killed the flow
Mm.
before you went there.
So
So like
by the
it's,
time I got there, it was just
yeah,
done.
there was really nothing much going on. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So it seems like Japan is interested in like, quote, risky assets, or I guess maybe it's the accessibility of these assets. Maybe, for Forex and for cryptocurrencies, they're more interested in these because it's just is it more
It's gambling.
accessible?
It's gambling.
Gambling. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I use the word both like investing and speculation, right?
Okay, yeah. I got
Right.
you.
So investing side is things that fixed income yield of the real estate, and there's another side of the coin, which is speculation.
Mm-hmm.
So the short term, trying to make money, don't want to hold long term. That's FX, like 25x, 50x leverage. The big
Going
flyer.
all
Like,
in.
yeah. Like cryptocurrency was too. Like I think at one point there was like of course 25, 50x leverage in this like super high volatile cryptocurrency world in Japan. So of course, we are the country of pachinko and a bunch of those like street slot machines all over this
Yeah.
nation. So basically that's the same thing. Speculation, same thing for us.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. I think Korea is similar in
Yeah,
that
yeah,
way. Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yeah,
I'll just let you go ahead and wrap up and then highlight anything
yeah.
that you want to highlight for Alpaca. What are you guys doing for the future, and where do you want people to look?
Yeah, I mean, like we continue to build like a bunch of the developer products for developer primitive in terms of the API offering. So, like even if you are not like familiar with the even financial trading or investing, we make sure that our API product, you don't need to know anything about it. We are just building developer API. No need for understanding of investing and trading, and you can just use it. So that's how we continue to build the product. So if you're just understand the code or interested in learning about the code, it's a great motivation because it's about money investing. You're related to it. So please check out Alpaca.markets.
Awesome. So it's alpaca.markets.com, or is it
Yes, yeah,
alpaca.markets?
it's just Alpaca.markets with S markets.
Got it.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then where can they find you guys on social media as well?
So it's we are on the Twitter and Facebook, LinkedIn. But like if you put like Google it with like Alpaca space trading or something, like a lot of our related websites show up.
Okay, and I think I remember your Twitter is Alpaca HQ. I want to say.
Yeah, headquarter HQ. Yeah.
Okay, so if everybody go follow Alpaca HQ.
HQ. Yep.
Yep, and go find them on LinkedIn as well. And then I don't think you want too many people connecting with you on LinkedIn.
It's fine. Like like anyone's welcome. Like
okay, all right. Well, go find them on LinkedIn too.
Yes, okay. Please.
Awesome. Okay. You about to have your DMs flooded.
yeah. It's fine, man.
Yeah, awesome. Oh wait, do you have a personal Twitter as well that you wanna tag in?
Oh yeah. Like it's IYOSHI. Yoshi.
Gotcha. Okay, and I'll
Maybe I should
this.
change it so that like this kind of occasion.
Yeah, I'll put it on the video anyway, so people will be able to see it. Yeah, no problem, man. Well, thank you, Yoshi, for stopping by Modern Markets Podcast. This has been a lot of fun. Yeah, thanks again, man, and we'll probably have you back on again for a future episode.
Yeah, definitely.
All right,
Enjoyed
thanks,
it.
man.
Thank you.